I'm Jim Carney.
I'm Linda Hirsch.
And this is EdCast, a program created and produced by educators for everyone interested in education.
For some time now, we've been hearing that attention to the arts in schools is dwindling. Standardized testing focuses on math and reading, and so the arts and other subjects seem to be receding into the curriculum background. Is this perception accurate? And why should we be concerned if our schools are not providing children with exposure to the arts? My guest today from the Center for Arts and Education discussed the many roles that the arts play in students' academic and social development, and what's happening in our schools today regarding involvement in the arts.
Later on in the program, I'll pay a visit to an arts program at a city school and talk to a professional who develops arts programs. But now we begin with Linda and her guest in the studio.
My guests today are Eric Pryor, Executive Director of the Center for Arts Education, and Douglas Israel, Director of Research and Policy for CAE. Welcome to EdCast, gentlemen.
Thank you.
for having
We
us.
said earlier, we've seen that there is a trend away from the arts and education. Why is this worrisome?
Well, it's worrisome because essentially we look at and feel like the first order of business in educating children is having them there, having them attentive and engaged. And we feel that the arts are an excellent tool in engaging young people and keeping their interest.
Now let's talk about the Center for Arts Education. What is your mission and what are some of the goals that you have?
Our mission is to stimulate and sustain quality arts education as an essential part of the curriculum for New York City public school students. And we do this through 4 key areas. Professional development, where we work with teachers, school leaders, as well as parent leaders. We do it through programs in the schools, both extended day programs as well as school day programs. And we also do it through advocacy and engagement in public awareness. Because the arts definitely, we feel, people need to understand the value of arts as it relates to education. And oftentimes people, particularly in our most needy schools, see the arts as for someone else.
And also I think people are saying, well, reading and math, those are so important. We should be focusing on those. Why do you say that it's equally important than to focus on the arts?
Well, I mean, if you look at the basis of the Common Core, it's really about career and college readiness. And when we talk about career and college readiness, I mean, we really are talking about, the ability to collaborate and work within a team. I mean, when I look at my team and what we do at CAE, we're not covering our paper. It's all about looking over that person's shoulder and working together as a group. It's about being able to effectively communicate your ideas, whether they're written or oral. It's about thinking out the box, being able to think creatively, problem solve, understanding that there could be multiple solutions to a particular problem, and to be able to be reflective and utilize, a reflective thinking in terms of critical thinking.
Now we live in an era when everyone wants evidence. So do we have any evidence that exposing children to the arts can really help them cognitively in school?
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a really broad base of evidence that points to the impacts of arts education on student development. It's a growing body of research, but it's pretty well established the impacts that, for instance, music education has on students' mathematic abilities, the impact that education in drama and theater has on students' ability to understand text and understand history and be able to express and comprehend not only language from the theater world, but language that is now important across Common Core and that is related to literature and just language development in general. And one of the things that we've been seeing, through studies that the Department of Justice did, Department of Education, is that arts education really helps improve student attendance as well at schools and improves graduation rates and keeps students motivated and ready to learn.
So you have data, there's data that supports that actual affects graduation rates.
Well, we actually did a study in 2009 that looked at data from New York City public high schools. We looked at over 200 high schools, and we looked at the relationship between those graduation rates and arts education that was being offered at the school. And what we found is that the schools that were in the top third of graduation rates, graduating like 75% or more of their students, those schools were dedicating the most resources to arts education, and they were providing their students with the most opportunities to engage in visual arts, in theater, in music, and in dance. And on the flip side, what we found is the schools that were at the bottom third in graduation rates, 55% graduation rate and under, those schools were dedicating the least resources. They had less certified arts teachers on staff. They had less spaces dedicated to arts learning. They had fewer amounts of partnerships with cultural institutions. And so what this shows, look, the research didn't prove causation, that the arts are the reason, the absolute reason these kids are,
Yeah, I was going to say, do we
going
know
on
the
to graduate.
causation, right?
Well, I mean, it'd be almost impossible to do
Right.
that kind of study. But what the study did show is that, the best schools in New York City, where they're really successful and they're graduating their kids on time, those schools understand the value of the arts, and they're ensuring that it's an essential part of the school day for every single kid. And the flip side is that those schools that are struggling, where they have low graduation rates, they're really not, in a way, they're shortchanging the students. They're not giving them an opportunity to have a complete education that their peers in some of the better schools are getting. So it's a matter of equity as well, and how do we ensure that even in those schools that are struggling, that those principals understand the value of the arts and are providing their students with the same educational opportunities that kids at Science and Stuyvesant are getting as well.
Now, I thought there was a New York State mandate that schools had to provide arts instruction. Is that mandate not happening, being put into effect?
Well, definitely there's a mandate there. The laws are in place that say what the children are supposed to receive. But a difficult part of it really has to do with the resources that they have to basically hold schools accountable and make sure they're compliant and enforce that compliance. That's really been the issue. We have great laws as it relates to what course offerings should be there with respect to the arts.
Yeah, and what the data shows, this is the data released by the Department of Education here in the city, is that more or less about 50% of our schools are out of compliance with the mandates that are on the books. And this is, it's a big number, and it's really not trivial stuff. I mean, the New York State Education Department, as well as the Federal Education Department, even in the city, have determined that, arts education is a central component of a quality education for public school students. They have great course requirements, but unfortunately, not all schools are providing what's required, and it is partially a resource issue that it's in individual schools, but also at the state and city level. How do you, help support those principals in those schools to ensure that they have those arts teachers on staff and that they know how to integrate the arts into the other subject areas? So yeah, it's a question about resources, but it's also about accountability and making sure that that's a part of the school day.
Now, Jim Carney was actually able to visit one of the schools that you work with, and he met with Principal Ramon Gonzalez at MS 223 in the Bronx. So we're going to take a look at that interview and also see what some of the students are actually doing in arts programs.
Okay.
Great.
MS 225, the Laboratory School of Finance and Technology, shares a building in the Willard Avenue section of the South Bronx. Ramon Gonzalez is the school's principal. Is there like a mission or a philosophy towards the arts in the school?
Absolutely. I think we believe in experiences, and we want to have kids have quality experiences, and that idea of experiences is in everything we do. So whether it's in literacy and math, we want quality experiences, and the arts are no different. And so we move from just giving kids art, which are state standards, to giving kids quality arts. And that required that we constantly go and observe those art lessons, assess the art lessons, allow the teachers development, and then share those practices with other schools. It has to be a community of inquiry, a community of practice if we want to grow our arts program. And that's always been what we've been doing since our partnership with Center for Arts Education.
And I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character.
During our visit, we had the opportunity to visit 3 classes. The first, a theater class.
In the art, not only are you learning the history and the theater, but you're learning how to speak in front of people. You're learning spacing. You're learning things that are going to play crucial roles in kids' social development as well as the theater discipline.
I have a dream today! Yes! Booyah! Awesome! OMG, sit down. Look at the sit down.
Abstract. It's words mixed together with colors.
And the second one you went to go see was a visual arts classroom. They were looking at the artist Jasper Johns. And the idea is that they use a study of classic arts, current arts, and cultural arts to develop self-awareness, self-esteem, and also practice the skills of the art. So everything sort of has a strategic lean to it. It's not just art for art's sake, but it's art for empowerment.
It's a collage.
It's like when you mix
And the third classroom we went to see was a guitar class. Now, these are kids who came to our school who never picked up an instrument before, and it's been our goal in our school that they learn at least one instrument. But you have kids in there who know 3 instruments. You have kids in there, and I'm talking about learned it here. And again, the idea is that we want to build a confidence that art is also a discipline, and these are all skills that are going to affect other parts of the classroom. And we believe art is an entry point. For some kids who are not successful in math, they're successful in art. We want to leverage that success in art to be successful in math. I've always said that arts is our entry point for kids to be equal to others. And why is that? Because kids come with so many other things to the table, especially in the middle school, that sometimes their strengths are lost. And art happens to be one of their strengths. And it's also an environment where kids can fail in and no one's laughing. No one's making fun of them. And what they learn is that discipline, hard work build these compositions. And that even some of our greatest artists had failures for many years before they became great artists. That's a different way of approaching a subject than here are the steps for math. Here's the way that you have to read this poem. That's more didactic, while art is inquiry by nature.
Now, back to Linda and her guests in the studio.
This is obviously an engaged principal and an engaged school.
Right.
What can you tell us about the effect of the arts in this school?
Well, Principal Gonzalez is really, well, first of all, he took part in a program initiative of ours called SASSY, which is a program funded through the U.S. Department of Education. And the program really is, we looked at schools that really were low in terms of arts were not really existent within the school. And we utilized the arts there to help, create a cultural change within the building. One of the things that was key for Principal Gonzalez was attendance. I mean, we don't talk a lot about that, or maybe we do, but it's critical. And so we did coaching with him and looking at where to even put the arts within the context of the scheduling of the school day. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe Ramon was using Monday and Fridays because those were high.
In the beginning of the week, keep
them in. So that was one of the things that we looked at. Some of the other things that we did with him, as well as the other network groups, we brought them all together. So there was this network, a peer exchange, so principals could talk about best practices and how they were utilizing the arts to be effective within their building. So this is just a couple of things that were happening, but Ramon has just been exemplary.
Yeah, well, what's great about Ramon is he really understands the value of the arts, and the work that he's doing is really transformational, as Eric said. And this is one of the poorest school districts, congressional districts in the nation. And, there's real issues of equity here. And this piece about attendance is really important because middle school is usually the determining factor. Like if kids get lost in middle school and are no longer interested, they're most likely not going on to high school.
Is that why the SASSY, the School Arts Support Initiative, focuses on middle school?
Yeah,
Yes.
Because I know it's a middle school program.
Yeah, we've been working with 4 middle schools in New York City, all underserved in terms of the arts. And what's interesting is, there are these, Ramon's story about how he uses the arts on Monday and Friday to increase attendance on days when students don't show up as much. But we've been doing some more in-depth study about, the impact of this program on student outcomes. And what we found over the 3-year study period is that student test scores in English language arts and math have increased at a greater rate compared to the control schools that we've been looking at. I think that they've shown like 10% gains in
That's
math, like 6% gains over the control schools in English. And so I don't want to, English and math scores are important, but they're not the only thing. There are all these other things that are of value that are coming out of this program.
Why do you think the arts engage students in ways that can affect their scores in other areas?
For me, I really think it boils down to confidence. I mean, I think, when we look at the narrowing of curriculum, I mean,
Standardized testing
Right.
is causing a narrowing of the curriculum.
Definitely. And bottom line is, I mean, I think we all probably at some point in our life have had something that's been a fear. And just because you take someone who's afraid of spiders and you put them in a room full of more spiders, it's not necessarily going to, reduce the fear. It may make the fear even greater. And what the arts does, and I think, as well as the other core subjects that have been sort of pushed to the margins, is that it allows students opportunity to find something that they can latch on to. And if you can find confidence in something that can make you believe in your ability, it makes it much easier to approach other areas, as well as the arts are all about process. And I think it's an excellent space in which you can teach people, how to utilize and understand a process and how to manipulate it to make certain that you can develop a process, whether whether it's in math or in English or another area that may help you achieve success.
What do you do in terms of parents? I'm wondering, do parents get involved in this in any way?
We do have a program called Parents as Arts Partners. One of the things in part of that, developing that program, is we understand oftentimes, and I'm a parent, I have 2 lovely daughters. Actually today is my little one's birthday, but it's essentially when we look at parents, oftentimes when we go to schools, it can be intimidating. When you're going to hear about, is your child performing or not performing in an area? The arts become a space, a safe space, so to speak, an area where parents can come in and feel great about what their kid is doing, feel proud about what they're doing. You're not coming in to hear possibly some type of bad news about behavior or something else. So it becomes a space where you can create the community, because it's important for a healthy dialogue to happen between the teachers and the parents, and the arts can function in that way.
Yeah, and I was going to say also that, that space that Eric talks about, the learning environment, is really also important for like English language learners or kids that, are struggling and not doing well in general classrooms. This gives them an opportunity to access learning in a different way. They get to get up out of their seat. They get to, express themselves in ways they often don't get to do in the school. And we find that, kids who are struggling with English language, this is great for them. It's an opportunity for them to be on equal footing, to have confidence in what they're doing and to participate. And so it's a great kind of stepping stone for kids who are having a hard time in school.
Jim also had the opportunity to visit with January Akselrad, who has an arts program called See the Wish, which also works with children in schools.
What is See the Wish?
See the Wish is a company that creates educational products that educate in entertaining and experiential ways. Our tagline is See the Wish, where education is entertaining.
When you say products, what kind of products?
Well, my background is in music and composition and theater and education. And after some years of performing and teaching, I began to write curriculum-based theater for children, specifically for elementary schools. What we did was package these plays, so they exist now as theater kits for teachers. So what we did was package these plays, so they exist now as theater kits for teachers. And that's one line of products. These are called dramaterials. And in this way, teachers have everything they need to bring theater into the classroom, but not necessarily to create great theater. That's not the object. The object is to use theater as a teaching tool, as a way of getting to every kid, because I believe what kids learn through theater, they never forget. Asking a classroom teacher to put on a play is akin to asking them to teach gym or teach music. And actually, I'd like to see it actually start at the level of education for teachers, that they have some part of their education where they're learning these particular skills, these tools, so that when they get the play, they're even better equipped. We actually have a primer for teachers.
What is the value of having music and having theater in the classroom in an elementary environment?
I think you take that first grade kid and you have them speak and you have them sing and you have them push through that fear. Because I don't care what you do later in life. If you're a lawyer, you're a public speaker. If you're a teacher, you're a public speaker. And the ability to get past that self-consciousness and not be afraid of the vibration of your own breath or the sound of your own voice gives you a certain power. And of course, when you take on a character, you view things very differently. You create empathy and you begin to see things differently. And I think it's incredibly enriching, especially for young people.
Now, back to Linda and her guests in the studio.
I think it's clear that arts educators really can see the effect that these programs have on children. In terms of national trends, is there anything happening outside of the New York City area that we should be aware of in terms of arts education?
Well, there are definitely some wonderful initiatives happening in LA, as well as Chicago.
Are they models for us in any way? Or
They're models for us, but I think, when you look at, for example, the Chicago initiative, a number of the things that they're looking to do in terms of, we're there. In terms of on the books, in terms of some of the laws and things that their kids are supposed to get. But then there are other areas in which we definitely can learn from them.
What's the ideal integration of arts and other content areas in schools that you would want to see? If you could recommend policy right now and say this is what we want to see, what is it you would want to see?
Well, I think, for the first thing, like as Eric mentioned, we have a pretty good set of instructional requirements and learning standards for the arts. So I think the first thing would be ensuring that every child is receiving what the state education department has deemed as part of a complete whole education. So that would be the first part. But it's
so enforce what we already have in some way.
Already have,
but
right.
It's important, to make sure that kids are getting high quality instruction taught by a certified instructor that understands the content area that they're teaching.
We didn't talk about that yet, and we know we're going to run out of time soon, but where do your instructors come from? When you say quality arts instructors, where are your people from? And who are
if you
they?
talk about teaching artists, they're from all over the
Okay.
city. I think when Doug is talking about qualified instructors, he's talking about certified teachers.
So you mean the
who would
teachers
teach.
in the classroom?
Correct.
Okay.
Right. Correct.
So we have our own set of teaching artists that goes into the
Right.
schools and does residencies. But we think it's always important that a school actually has on staff a certified art instructor, because then they're part of the school day. They see the
Right.
kids all the time, and ideally they're working with like a teaching artist from a cultural institution. So you could bring in like real artists to talk about their work and show students like more cutting edge techniques, or so it's certified arts teachers working
And
with
it's not just the
cultural
day the
institutions.
teaching artist is there. It's someone who's present all the time, who has a sense of the
Yeah, it's
importance
an
of the
important
art.
thing. And then
Right.
also the spaces that are dedicated to the arts, like a real music room or a theater, a black box, so kids understand what the arts are about, and these kind of spaces actually show to improve the learning that happens. So these are important things. And then of course resources, ensuring that the schools have the money in their budget and are able to keep those arts teachers on staff and have that space, and buy the instruments and the art supplies that are needed to really deliver a quality education.
Do schools have budgets that could accommodate those things? Instruments are expensive. And when we look at New York City, do our schools have these things, and do they have the money to buy them?
Some people would say we had that. New York City, we had Project Arts, which was a dedicated funding line that could be used for instruments or materials, as well as instruction or partnerships. Essentially, there are things that happen in terms of the management style of Mayor Bloomberg, and it kind of a perfect storm occurred with respect to what was happening in our economy and the budgets, and the fact that Mayor Bloomberg, and rightfully, I understand as a manager, really felt like he didn't want to put mandates on how to use financial resources on his principals, which you put No Child Left Behind or sort of a release of those mandates, it created the perfect storm where a lot of principals didn't understand the role the arts could play, and began to, more have things teaching to the test and more test prep, which sort of, encroached on the time, instructional time that could be used for the arts.
Well, in the minimal time that we have left, there's an election coming up, and there are many candidates so far who seem to be running.
Right.
What would you like to see happening in this mayoral election in terms of the arts? So you just said right now principals are not mandated in ways to use money. Would it be better if they were told to use a percentage of their budget for the arts?
Definitely, I would love
I mean,
to.
you must use a certain amount.
I mean, we would definitely support and feel that's very important. I think, but when I look at the mayoral race,
so let's look at this race.
Sure.
What do you see happening, and what would you like to see happen?
well, I would love to see, essentially, I mean, a lot of the dialogue, has been around teacher accountability and utilizing standardized tests to get there. Then there's been the dialogue about, charter versus district schools. But essentially, there's not been a lot of dialogue around the content and curriculum, what's happening. I mean, and I look at it, and I like analogies, and I look at it like if we were in a restaurant, you can have the best chefs and the best staff delivering the wonderful food, but if you don't have the ingredients, if you don't have that mix of veggies and all the things you need, it's not gonna come out quite right. And we look at the arts as a key ingredient to education.
Yeah, and we see, 2014, we're going to be having a new mayor, most likely a new schools chancellor, new public advocate, new city council members. We see this as a really pivotal moment and a great opportunity for New York City to really play a leadership role in kind of re-engaging and reinvigorating the school day. So it moves away. I mean, these are important discussions that are being had, but we need to focus again on that curriculum, ensuring that kids are getting a rich and engaging curriculum that keeps them interested in school, on track to graduation, and ultimately successful in college and career. And so we're going to be, reaching out to the candidates for mayor office to talk to them about some of the challenges about implementing arts education in school and some of the potential solutions that they could, as the next mayor, implement to help restore arts education in public schools.
In the few seconds we have left, is there anything that you would want to add that we have not discussed yet?
Well, I would just say as we move into a society, a world community where it's becoming smaller with technology, I think we have to really teach our young people how to think, because I don't think any of us can really predict what industries are going to be before us in 10 years, because it's all rapidly changing. So we need young people who can think.
And we also need young people who have passion.
Passion.
The arts really gives them
Passion.
What is your website so people could go for more information? We will put it on screen, but can you just tell us what it is?
It's www.caenyc.org.
caenyc.org.
Yes.
Thank you both so much. Eric Pryor, Doug Israel, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Linda.
And we will certainly ask our mayoral candidates how they feel about arts education.
Great, we'll be watching.
We'll be.
Thank you so much.
We'd like to hear from you. Drop us a line at cunyedcast@gmail.com. Well, that does it for this last 2012 edition of EdCast. Thanks for joining us.
And for all of us at EdCast, a Happy New Year, and please stay with us in 2013 for all the news in education.
All of us at EdCast offer our thoughts and sympathies to the victims and families of the Newtown tragedy.